For anyone who don't know, my name is Lyrica, and I did my project on probation officers because that's what I want to do once I get my bachelor's degree. So if you all see me looking down, it's just because I wrote down some notes to make sure I don't miss anything in my video. I also have my laptop in front of me because I did a Q&A with Dr. Mulaney, who was a probation officer herself, and she answered a couple questions for me. I just asked her personal experience and some things I couldn't find online. So when we get to that part, if you see me looking down, that's why. So originally I wanted to be a police officer. I just want to help people. So when I was in the military, I wanted to become a military police, but instead I got out of the military and I came to school to get my degree in criminal justice, and originally wanted to just work for CPD, but I didn't really know any other career options or choices. So as I went through my classes and I learned more about probation officers, it interests me more so because they're more of the like social work aspect of police officers, and my goal is to help people. The job itself is important because it allows individuals to stay in the community while they're trying to better themselves. I think a lot of the times when people go to jail, they can become institutionalized, and that can alter your way of thinking. So I think that it gives people a better opportunity to right their wrongs, and it also is less costly than incarceration. And it also helps with overcrowding in jail. And like I said, the major one for me is that it gives people a second chance to do better in life. I think once you get put into the system and you get incarcerated, you can become institutionalized, and then it's harder for your mindset to get on a clearer track to become a positive member of society. So that's why I think probation is important in general. Facts about the job itself. What exactly does a probation officer do? So I kind of mentioned it a little at the beginning to say that they're more of the social worker aspect of a police officer. So they assist with rehabilitation, and they monitor the progress of the probationer. They evaluate the needs of the probationer. They create treatment plans for the probationer. This could be what if they need drug treatment, or anything else, any other problems that could have caused them to commit whatever crime. Then the probation officer would help them with those treatment plans. They help the probationer. A probation officer helps the probationer prepare for life after probation, because it's not a lifelong thing. So you do eventually get off probation, and when you do, it's the probation officer's job to help the probationer to know how to get acclimated to life where no one is monitoring you. So a probation officer will also provide resources to the person who's on probation. They write reports on the probationer's progress. They investigate the offender's history because they do have to turn in things for the court. The caseload for a probation officer varies by the agency or the state. And they also do home and employment checks. So just to make sure that everything is safe, that the probationer is living where they say they are, that they have work if they say that they have work. And they basically just check in on them to make sure that everything is okay. The application process and a little bit of the qualifications for to become a probation officer. So one thing that you need is your bachelor's degree. You need your bachelor's degree to become a probation officer, and you have to get your degree in the fields of behavioral science, criminal justice, social work, psychology, criminal law, human relations, or public administration. So those are just the few that I found when I researched. I'm not sure if there's any more that could also qualify, but I do know that those are the main things that you need your bachelor's in order to become a probation officer. So that's one of the qualifications. It also looks good on your application if you can do if you have experience. So this could be law enforcement experience. A lot of the time people will be correctional officers first, or something in counseling. Experience, just like any other job, when you applying, it just helps weed you out from the other people. So that's always a good thing. Requirements to become a probation officer: you must be a United States citizen, and all of these things that I'm going to say are kind of the same qualifications to become a police officer. You have to be 37 years old or younger at the time of your application. You have to have a college degree like we just talked about. Also, you'll get relevant training on being a probation officer. Be of decent and moral characters. That applies to anybody in any field, but for a probation officer too. They also have a written exam. They still have a fitness test, and they have capability assessments. You have to pass a oral interview, a psychological, and a physical exam. You have to pass a background check, and you cannot be a convicted felon. So a lot of the same things as any other job in law enforcement. Those are a few of the things. You also need to have a driver's license as well. So those are just some of the basic all around qualifications to become a probation officer. And I actually asked in my Q&A, you'll see a little more detail on the application process from Dr. Mulaney's answers. So, because she was a probation officer at a point. And so I just wanted to get her personal opinion on some stuff, and also some information that I couldn't find, or information that I found that wasn't consistent when I researched the topic. So my first question to Dr. Mulaney was, what is the application process like to become a probation officer? You all, I'm going to be reading from my laptop so I can read word for word what she responded to me, and I can quote her. Dr. Mulaney replied and said, the application process can be complicated. Part of the reason is that every state is different in terms of their process and requirements. This, for the state of Illinois, you apply through the administrative office of the Illinois courts. They first certify that you meet the basic requirements and then forward you the application. There is one application for the entire state. You would indicate which county and which department you're interested in applying for. From there, each individual agency will contact you, and you would then have to complete their personal applications. From there, the applications are submitted, then you are called in for interview. So they're just touching a little more on the application process. My next question to Dr. Mulaney was, in your opinion, what was the most important part of your job as a probation officer? She replied and said, I'm not sure if I can say there was any part of my job that was more important than the other. I suppose the ability to help them help themselves. So many of those on probation do not know how to find the help they needed. This can also include finding employment. Part of my job was to assist them in not only finding a job, but to teach them how to look for a job, how to fill out an application, and how to interview for a job. Other services that they needed included counseling, drug treatment, and education as well. My next question to Dr. Mulaney was, what would be the one piece of advice that you would have for a future probation officer? She replied and said, the one piece of advice that I would give a future probation officer is to value even the small successes. As a probation officer, there will be plenty of failures. Someone doesn't show up, they test positive for drugs, they commit another crime. The list can go on. But on occasions, you have successes. These include someone getting a job or achieving some sort of educational success. These successes are huge to the probationer, but should also be huge to the officer as well. That's very interesting. I feel like to be a probation officer, you really need to be passionate about your job. My next question was, what skills do you think someone needs to be a good probation officer? She said, there are a few skills that are important. They must be good communicators, which I personally think is in every field. In every field in law enforcement, you need to be a good communicator. As well as good listeners, they also must be strong and stand firm in their decision. Probation officers must be culturally competent and understand and appreciate diversity, as one's caseload will become comprised of truly diverse population. I would also add ethical, organized, and a good writer. I also asked, I said, in your opinion, what was the main goal of being a probation officer? She replied and said, probation officers are known to wear two hats, that of a police officer and that of a social worker. The goals of a probation officer are twofold: to make sure that the probationer is complying with their conditions, which also supports public safety issues, and to make sure that the probationer is receiving the services that they need. My last question to Dr. Mullaney was, in your opinion, during your time as a probation officer, do you feel you honestly helped and gave people tools to become better members of society? She replied and said, yes, I do. There are many who did not take or want the help. They went through the motions of probation and reported when they needed and stayed out of trouble, but they did not take advantage of the services that were offered to them. But there were also those who really wanted to change, were through with getting in trouble and were afraid of perhaps going to prison. These were the individuals who attended treatment, went to counseling, and sought out employment. The main focus of my video is the effect that probation and a probation officer can have on the client or the probationer. Probation has a huge effect on their clients. Whether it's a negative effect or a positive effect depends on how the client or the probationer accepts and uses the resources and help. A probation officer can't force the probationer to better themselves. A probation officer can only provide the probationer with helpful tools, but the probationer has to want better for themselves. If they, as in the probationer, does take the tools and use them correctly, that can change their lives completely around and become and stay great members of society. It's not just a simple answer on what is the effect of probation to me, because it's a two-way street. And I believe Dr. Mullaney mentioned that as well. You can be a social worker to someone, you can help someone as much as you want, but unless that person wants to help themselves, then it could work or it could not, or it could work and just not work as effectively. But it all depends on the person. To make sure, as a probation officer, in my opinion, what I think a probation officer could do to make sure that probation itself has a huge impact, positive impact on the probationer, is to be passionate enough to really try and help these people who are on probation. Look at it as them having a second chance and flood them with any information and any resources that they need to better themselves. From there, the only thing you can do is hope that they're motivated enough by you or others surrounding them to actually take that information and do something positive with it, because it can have a really good effect and people can really turn around before it gets too bad for them. But it all depends on that person. I talked about resources that probation officers give probationers. Now, I couldn't find any specific organizations, but some of the things that it could be, I mentioned drug treatment already, educational services that a probation officer can help with, counseling, support groups, housing, and employment resources are available. As a probation officer, your job is to know those resources so that you can give those resources to the client. My personal opinion on probation officers or probation itself in general. I think a huge part of being a good probation officer is knowing the effect that probation itself can have on the client. My personal opinion about probation is that it is a great second chance for people. Sometimes people make mistakes and bad decisions in their life. We're all humans. It happens to all of us. So probation gives those people the chance to learn how to be a positive member of society. Probation can give people the tools and skills they never knew. Some people are sadly a product of their environment, and that's what causes them to get in trouble. So as a probation officer, I don't think that you should look at everyone as like a criminal, like they committed a crime, but some people just may not know right from wrong, or they may know it's wrong, but they grew up and people around them think it's okay, so they think it's okay. It's the probation officer's job to right that wrong and teach that person actual morals and the correct way that we're all supposed to live our daily lives. Probation is something that I think should be given only once, because if it's given too much to a person, then they may see it as them getting off of their crimes in an easy way. Probation is something that it can be very effective. Like I said, it depends on the client, and it can have a huge effect on the client, but depending on how good the probation officer is and how willing and motivated the client is. But I do think that probation is only effective as a one like opportunity. If you commit a crime and you get probation, it does seem like an easy way out, but it's also it's a second chance for you. So I don't think that the next time if you end up committing a crime again, you should get probation. You didn't take the opportunity to better yourself from the first time you got the resources. I don't think you're gonna better yourself from a second time. If you are put in a position where you can make better choices and you still decide to make the wrong choices, you don't get that easy way out again. I think the next time you should be punished by jail time or going to prison, so that you can know the value of what probation really could have done had you really took the opportunity to use those resources in a positive way. Last little thing that I'll say about probation officers is that I think it gives you the opportunity to be a mentor. And I think, like Dr. Mulaney said, you do need to be culturally diverse and just open-minded to understanding all types of people, because you will work with all types of people. And if you truly want to help people better themselves, then that is a huge part of helping them better themselves.